I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with the cattle market summary for the week ending February the 8th, brought to you entirely by DV Auction. Don't forget, we're in the full swing of production sales season right here, and you can get on there at dvauction.com and look through the schedule, go through the different catalogs, and kind of go shopping online for some breeding stock. Don't forget, on Monday the 11th here, we've got the Felton Angus Ranch sale from Springdale, Montana. If you want some big, rugged, long-lasting bulls right there, you can find them right there at Felton Angus, and they won't cost you $1.5 million, but they will be good. But we had a big empty victory last week on your fat cattle sales. You know, we've been scraping, begging, trying to get to 125 here. It seems like for the last 6 weeks or so, and feeling like the market deserved to be 125, but it was just kind of a barrier, a threshold that the market could not get over. But we come into this past week knowing that the Packers needed cattle. We're almost getting to the start of early spring demand. They're wanting to ramp up kills just a little bit. It's getting to be that time of year. This weather, the mud, the frigid cold temperatures has pulled these cattle back that's on the show list, so the weights are down. Those that have wanted to leave cattle on feed a little bit longer to try to get back some of what they lost. So there's not as many cattle out there to get a hold of, and it just seemed like the market was ripe this week. But actually, your negotiated cash sellers wanted a little more than 125, and it ended up just kind of being a flop. But this is going to be a pivotal week coming in this week with Packers short bought. And the same kind of scenario as last week, and we need to make hay right now between now and this April board going off, because we drop off to June. It gets pretty sad. But the next 2 months is the time to really make a lot of hay in this fat cattle market, and that's what pulls everything up. Your feeder cattle, your replacement stock, everything. So we just hope that the guys can do as much as they can here in the short time they've got to work with. But look at the board for last week. February live cattle futures. Monday was up 27, Tuesday up 97, Wednesday off 30, Thursday down 10 cents, and Friday up $1.07. And that's on top of over 100 of tender deliveries, and normally that just weighs on the board something terrible. But it did kind of hold the market at bay a little bit, because guys were trying to get their bases straightened back out. So tenders for delivery are a good thing for the market. It keeps that board true, but it does tend to pull it down a little bit. But guys have been working with a negative basis right now, trying to get the market to 125, and we're up there at 127 and change. That's just more money that they're losing on their closeouts. But talk about a strong board. Tender 100 contracts for delivery, and it's still up $1.92 for the week. Your April contracts ended at 127.92, up $1.65 for the week. March feeder cattle, Monday was up $1.70, Tuesday down 40, Wednesday down 65, Thursday was up 7 cents, and Friday up 85 cents. With your March contract on feeders ending the week at 144.10, that was up $1.58 for the week. April ended at 145.90, and we saw some support on your out fronts on your feeder board. Finally, August broke 150 this past week, and now just under 151. But I've told you time and time again, we know that those green grass yearlings coming off of those big regional pastures, double stock in July, and then your regular tenure in August and September, they're going to be worth a lot more than that. And things just don't work too much whenever they're going plus basis several dollars. But I would feel just as comfortable with that August feeder board at 170 as I would with it at 150 and change. But your fat cattle trade, like I said, kind of an empty victory there. We did achieve the Packers to give $1.25, and they were wanting to give more $1.25, but guys felt like they deserved more than that. Most of your Southern Plains sellers were priced at 127, and the Packers were just daring them to let them call in for 126, but most guys wouldn't do it. And so we just kind of lulled around there until late in the day, like we do sometimes. Some of your Northern Plains, Nebraska guys that could get a live bid sold at 125, and there was some pockets in Kansas that sold at 125, but the rest of the guys did not cave. They even had some marginal cattle that they had priced at 126, and they were advertising those guys that had top cattle at priced at 127, trying to get them to take the 126. So we could have had 126. We ended up with 125. They wanted 127, but your dress market in the Northern Plains was $200, and $2 dress isn't too bad. That's $1 to mostly $2 higher in the beef, and that's not too bad a market, and we are on the upswing. But like I said, got to make a lot of hay here in the next several days. This market deserves to get deep into the 130s, and most everybody pretty much believes that's going to happen. Box beef cutout values just kind of uneven for the week. Your weekly average on choice cuts, 216.86. That was 21 cents higher than the weekly average the week before, and selects at 212.32, off 32 cents. That gives a choice select spread of $4.54 and just a moderate movement of 534 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter, very healthy, 614,000 for the week last week. That was 21,000 more than the previous week, and 25,000 more than the same week a year ago. And if you look, we finally got all the actuals in on our 2018 slaughter. So anytime we beat out year ago slaughter, it's a big deal. We beat it out 25,000 last week. But look at the breakdown on this 2018 slaughter. Like we said, is up 2.6% for the year as a whole, up 8.3% from the 3-year average. And look at these numbers that just say that we're killing the factory here. Heifer slaughter was up 6.4 compared to the previous year, up 16.2 compared to the 3-year average, and up 11.3 to the 5-year average. So that's saying that we slaughtered a lot of heifers. Nobody's keeping any heifers back. They were keeping the heifers back 2 or 3 years ago, but now we're starting to kill a lot of cows. And I'm talking beef cows, not dairy cows, but beef cow slaughter, up 8.6 for the year, up 20% for the 3-year average. That is tremendous. And up 14.1% to the 5-year average. So all this goes to show that we had a short-lived rebuilding period here. And the cow market was terrible last summer because everybody was dumping so many cows on there. Wasn't all that well advertised. Nobody seems to remember it. But you remember last summer in Missouri, in Arkansas, in a lot of those places going across the south, headed east there in the Dixieland, we saw some pretty dry weather there, and they were running out of water, didn't have enough grazing. They were selling off a lot of cows, and a lot of them were bred. Most of them were bred, and nobody had enough grazing or enough hay stocks to buy any of those bred cows, so they wouldn't even beat out the packer on them, even though the kill market was down big. But we're going to get this inventory report coming in here finally towards the end of this month. If it says that we are continuing to rebuild and we're going to have a bigger calf crop this year than we did last year, I'm going to call bullshit to it right now. We see a lot of analysts still believing in that. I'm going to tell you right now that USDA data, I don't care if it's NASS or Market News, it's still an estimate too. And I just cannot see how we're continuing to rebuild when our beef cow slaughter this past year in 2018 was 20% higher than the 3-year average. But talking about some of that information, and that was supplied to me from Lonnie Peets, a co-worker that I used to work with at USDA Ag Marketing Service. He also, if it's any good, normally writes the National Feeder and Stocker Cattle Summary, which a lot of you know that I authored for about 15 years. And I just want to give you guys a heads up. They're thinking about making that National Feeder Cattle Summary a Monday report. Now, how much sense does that make? You always want your weekly reports to come out on Friday. Nobody cares what last week's market is on Monday. They're on to the next week. And it got to be a struggle for me to put that National Feeder Cattle Summary out on a Friday, because a lot of the state programs started putting them out on Monday, mostly because they didn't want to work on Friday. But if you go to the National Feeder Cattle Summary Market Report, you can see a little blurb up there that tells you what they're thinking about doing, and it has a place where you can leave a comment. We need that National Feeder Cattle Summary to come out on Friday, and then it can get to your publications that like to put that out in their papers and market papers as quick as they can. Why would you want to wait another 3 days to put out markets? It's already old as it can be, but you know where you can get your real-time data at, right here at your Cattle Market Summary Market Report and on the Feeder Flash Daily. But let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your calves are still very popular, and I know it's still cold. I got a taste of that cold this past week. I was up in Nebraska. I got to feel what negative 15 feels like, regular air temperature. So even though I'm a Southwest guy nowadays, but I've had plenty of that cold, and you guys have had a lot of it up in the Midwest in the last 3 weeks. But spring is a-coming, but these calves have been popular throughout this frigid tundra that we've had. We're going to run out of stocker cattle, guys, to turn out on these summer pastures. They're starting to get high. Your 5-weight steer calves are routinely approaching and sometimes passing $2 a pound. That's a good benchmark to think of when you start thinking about how popular these grazing calves are and guys wanting them. What they're really going to want is some green, thinner type 6-weight steers to turn out in mid-April. And we're not going to have enough of them because we just don't have enough guys that are fall calving. So they're going to continue to charge here over the next several weeks as guys try to get enough of those lighter weight cattle that'll really turn on. But what they want to turn out is a green 6-weight steer. That way they can put 250 pounds on him. He'll come off those pastures at the end of the summer or early fall weighing in the 9s, and then they can put him on feed, and he will absolutely turn flips as soon as you put him on feed. Those are the best grazing cattle of the year, and then you can make him weigh 16 something fat and have a lot of gain, cheap gain there, and get your cost of gains down there to nothing. But let's look at your feeder cattle market. Real-time index on Cattle Market Central ended the week last week at 141.86. That was up just 37 cents compared to the end of the previous week. That 141.86 compares to your most recent CME cash feeder cattle index, which was 141.69. Like I said, your RTI runs right ahead of your cash feeder cattle index. When we get to May and they stop counting those commented cattle like fleshies and fulls, it'll be right in there tight. But whenever the markets have been fairly steady, they get really, really close like they did this past week. But cash feeders in your auctions last week, mostly steady. Calves steady to $2 higher in most places. Instances sharply higher. And some of that in your southeast is we're starting to see temperatures moderate, and guys are looking at your long-term forecast and they're thinking, maybe I can hurry up and get some of these lightweight southeastern calves in before all the other orders get in there and they get too high. Maybe I can get those cattle straightened up good and be ready to go by the time grass gets here. But look at some of your auction markets for last week, late in the week. Friday, Burwell, Nebraska. That's a DV auction customer. You can watch their sales on DV auction and bid right there. Burwell had 2,700 head on Friday. You look at this report there, it shows kind of the breakdown of what everything brought. That's a Cattle Market Central market report. Look at the most popular weight of steers. 521 head of 7-weight steers averaged 740 pounds at 151.41 on the average. Very impressive. Heifers on 6-weight heifers, that was the best tested. 440 head of 6-weight heifers, averaged 648 at 147.79, and I guarantee you there was some push in there on those 6 weights on some that were replacement types, and just because the replacement guy wanted them doesn't mean they all went to replacement, because we had farmer feeders in there that like to feed those 6-weight heifers, and they were pushing on them too, but kind of 2-weight cattle there. Look at some individual quotes. Way out west, Shasta Livestock Auction Yard, Merle Haggard Commission Company there in Cottonwood, California. 52 head of 525-pound steers bring $186 on the West Coast. St. Ann, South Dakota, 84 head of 708-pound steers bring $155.75. That's a look at your week's markets from a home DV auction office here in Canyon, Texas. We'll talk to you next week.